Welcome to Storytime with the Intimacy Ally. Each episode will tear down a myth, kick a social norm in the beanbag, gut punch a sex ed untruth, or destroy a poorly constructed relationship expectation. Get ready to unlearn all the crap you accepted as fact. Strap in for a mind-blowing revision on what sex is and what it can do. Prepare yourself for a whole new thought pattern when it comes to modern relationships. And now, here's your host, Jenny Simus, the Intimacy Ally, relationship expert and certified sex and intimacy coach.
Hello, my lovelies. Welcome back to Storytime with the Intimacy Ally. I am Jenny Simus, your host, the Intimacy Ally. Happy New Year, everyone. I am over the moon with how many changes I have made this year, or I guess last year. And I'm really excited right now about learning about and getting into some very low carb options because I found out like a year ago that I have diabetes pretty early on, I guess, in the game. Learning all sorts of things about sugar and the terrible things that it can do to you, and how I have been basically a sugar addict all my life. So letting go of some of that, and it's been interesting to say the least. I'm only about a week into it. Let's not go too crazy yet, but I am really hopeful that maybe I can reverse my diabetes, send it into remission, as they say. So I want to talk tonight about some of these myths that I grew up understanding about relationships. And I feel like I've said a few times on the show that I got a lot of my ideas on how things are supposed to be by, people around me, peers, family members, not necessarily my parents, but also from TV and movies and books. And I have to say that as far as a marriage example goes, what I remember most growing up with was Married with Children. And I don't know how old anybody is who's listening to this. If you are in that, 35 to 45-year-old range, you probably came up watching Married with Children as well. And it's been really interesting because my daughter is a total Modern Family fanatic, right? So we'll get to that in a little bit. But let me start out with Married with Children. Okay, so you got Al Bundy, hand down his pants, shoe salesman, can't stand his wife, but he's still with her, would beat the shit out of anybody that said anything wrong to her, but he'll talk shit to her all day long about how lazy she is. Peg, as she went through the show, Peg Bundy, the mom, like she started out cooking every once in a while, and then it just became this joke that all she did was sit on the couch, watch television, and eat bonbons, and shake her leg with her high heel shoe on. And then you had Kelly Bundy, who was really stupid, and Bud Bundy, who was really smart, but also really lame and horny. So that was like the family of four that I grew up watching. And my dad, who was like this very sensitive and, learned. He was really educated. He was an electrical engineer at fucking NASA. He loved my mom. He took us to the theater. He took us to, museums and made sure that we had culture and this and that. But God, he loved this fucking show. And we watched it all the time. Like when it was first coming on, we would watch it as soon as it came on. And then when they started having reruns, we watched it whenever there was a rerun. And the thing that really bothers me about how much my dad liked this show is that he was so very much the opposite of Al Bundy. So much to the point that, I mean, there's nothing that they did that was the same except that they were like the men of the house. And it just kind of drove me bananas. And I wonder if, like, in a different version of my dad, maybe when he was younger, maybe his first marriage to his first wife, was he like that? Was he Al Bundy? I'll have to ask my oldest sister one day. Because she got to have him at like a typical father age. I was the baby of the second marriage, so he was 59 when I was born. So my dad and her dad, like, we got very different versions of him, but he was still the same nut job, total kook. Now, the reason that I'm bringing this up is because I've been trying to suss out all of these ideas about dating and relationships and how we could do this better, how we could maybe teach women to not get into those bad relationships that they end up having to leave. 5 years, 10 years, 11 years for me down the road. And to not get treated in such a way that you are being constantly put down or constantly disrespected. But when I think about it, that was what I saw. That was absolutely what I saw. I saw it not only in my friends who were also in these fucked up relationships, but on the screen with fucking Peg and Al Bundy. I mean, they talked so much shit about each other. Everything that he did, she emasculated him. Every time that he tried to, be any kind of nice, she shot him down. And anything that he did that was, supposed to pay off or something somehow for the relationship, it never panned out. And with her, he just, he called her lazy, complained about her cooking when there was still cooking, and then just complained that she never cooked, she never cleaned, she didn't know how to do anything. All of these fucking horrible things that they said to each other. And my mind is just blown that this was how I hung out with my dad, was watching this fucking terrible show where this guy talks about reading Bigums all the time. And it was hilarious. It was. But when I had that ingrained in me, in my mind, as like normative, like, it's totally okay to be shitty to your partner. It's actually funny to be shitty to your partner. And I see it. I see reflections of how much it affected my generation all the time. People who date or who are married at our age, like, you can see these are the people who had Married with Children playing in the background in their fucking house. Because it doesn't matter if their parents are respectful of each other. they learned from the boob tube. Like, we sat there and absorbed that fucking negative energy. We sat there and absorbed how ill you should speak about your partner. We observed how you should definitely put them down and joke about them. Oh, and you should also be very different depending on who you're around. That one kills me all the time. If you can't talk to your partner the same way that you would alone, like in front of your friends and family, like, okay, let's say you get around, you know, all of your husband's family. And when you are around all of your husband's family, your husband constantly talks about how much smarter he is than you, or about how little you contribute to the household because you're just a stay-at-home mom. Or your boyfriend, who you haven't been seeing that long, takes you to meet his family or meet some of his friends. And when you guys are alone, he is so sweet and, accommodating and patient. And then when you get around these other people, he gets very agitated very quickly with you and cracks jokes about your appearance or your brain power or your earning power, whatever. Do you follow me? Like, he's totally pulling a page out of Al Bundy's book. And women do it too. You do the opposite, or you do it from the other side. And it's a total emulation of Peg, just being ready to put someone down and knock the wind out of them and totally cut them off at the knees for being a man, right? So I find it so interesting that anyone is surprised that people who are in their late 30s, early 40s are getting separated, getting divorced, trying again, starting over again in relationship after, years out of them or years in them. I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised that they're ending because look who our role models were. Okay, and sure, on the show they stayed together, but should they have? I mean, for real, should Al Bundy and Peg Bundy have stayed together? They hated each other. So I want you to really think about that because that was my experience. Yours obviously doesn't have to be exactly the same. But I do feel like we had these really, really shitty examples of media representations of a normal couple, and that those media representations of a normal couple being fucking awful to each other is what kind of set us up to be this mediocre and disengaged and unhappy as relationship partners. I'm not saying that everybody is, but I do feel like, my services wouldn't exist and people wouldn't be interested or like so interested in knowing how I landed somebody at like 40, 41. If we all hadn't come up having these very similar struggles and very similar, just distasteful and shockingly sad representations for us to kind of grow up thinking, yeah, that's what married with children is like, you're just fucked, and you never get to have sex anymore, and you're just gonna like sit there and rot, and yeah, it can never get any better. So I hate to leave it on such a gloomy note. I don't want to do that. Let's see. How can I perk us up a little bit? I will be releasing that making online dating magical course. It will be coming out in February, not as a coincidence with Valentine's Day. It just so happens to be that's when I get a break in my MSW. That's a master's in social work program. And I really want you to think, like, if you're going to join this course, I just want you to think a little bit, like, what was your role model? What was your couple that you saw on TV? Was it Growing Pains? Was it Living Single? Was it Friends? Like, who was it that you saw that you were just like, oh, that is the couple that I understand and want to emulate, and oh my gosh, they're like so perfect. And of course, I understand it is TV, it is movies, what have you, but some of these get stuck. And like I said, it took me getting on the other side of my marriage that was heading toward the Bundys for me to realize how really grossly close it had gotten, and that it was part of my upbringing that got us there. So yeah, so just, mull that over. And while you're at it, go ahead and shoot over to my website and sign up on that wait list for that course. Please follow the show and give me some likes, give me some love if you want me to stick around and keep doing this. And last thing I want to say is you've got to... Oh, I can never remember what I fucking want to say at the end of the show. God damn it. Be kind. Stay curious. And remember, you get to write your own story. Take care, my lovelies.
Thank you for tuning in to Storytime with the Intimacy Ally. We hope you learned a bit more about putting the fire back in your romantic relationships, exploring communication and emotional readiness in all relationships, and how to expand your definition of intimacy so you can reach your relationship goals. Go to theintimacyally.com to subscribe and never miss an episode. Follow the links in the show notes to social media and events. Till next time, keep on learning, growing, and thinking. Storytime with the Intimacy Ally podcast is meant for educational and entertainment purposes only and should not be considered as health or mental health advice.